You're watching Scriptease. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the screenwriting of Paul Schrader and examining the script for Taxi Driver. You can expect mature themes and language, plus spoilers for the whole film. If you ask me what's the most important aspect to get right when creating a film, or any story for that matter, my ultimate answer would have to be character. All the insane plot twists and spectacular set pieces in the world can't save a script with poor characterization. But while some films default to archetypes just so they can score a passing grade, another type of film exists that puts characterization in the spotlight. The character's mindset is externalized onto the film's setting, giving us insight into how they perceive the world around them. Realizing our commonalities and differences with the character not only informs us about our own preconceptions, but also speaks to how humans behave as a whole. Paul Schrader is a prominent figure in this character study film landscape. One of the legendary screenwriters of modern film and a revered film critic, Schrader uses his stories to bring us inside the minds of self-destructive individuals who thrash against the societies they inhabit. Over the next two episodes, I'm going to delve into two of the best examples of this style of storytelling in Schrader's catalogue, Taxi Driver and First Reformed. Despite now being inseparable from movie culture, Schrader wasn't allowed to watch films as a child due to his strict religious upbringing. His family regularly attended the Calvinist Christian Reformed Church, and his parents educated him. It wasn't until Schrader was 17 years old that he rebelled, running away from home and seeing his first film, The Absent-Minded Professor. Wild in the Country was the first film Schrader saw that left a distinct impression on him, a film about a disturbed man who escapes his dysfunctional family to pursue a literary career. It doesn't take a psychoanalyst to see why Schrader connected with the film. This newfound passion drove Schrader to gain a Master of Arts in Film Studies from UCLA and establish himself as a film critic. His 1972 book Transcendental Style in Film, Ozu, Bresson, and Dreyer, is still used as a reference text in film study today. In 1974, Schrader earned acclaim as a screenwriter for a script written with his brother Leonard, titled The Yakuza. Although the film, directed by Sidney Pollack, was a bust at the box office, the script had been the subject of a bidding war which brought Schrader to the attention of up-and-coming directors, such as Brian De Palma, Steven Spielberg, and, crucially, Martin Scorsese. Schrader and Scorsese's collaboration on 1976's Taxi Driver created a cinematic classic and cemented Schrader as a master screenwriter. His full body of work is far too large to list here, but some films written by Schrader include Obsession, Rolling Thunder, Raging Bull, and The Last Temptation of Christ. Schrader's success with Taxi Driver also gave him the clout necessary to write and direct many of his own films, starting with Blue Collar in 1978, and going on to make American Gigolo, Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters, and Light Sleeper. In 2017, Schrader wrote and directed First Reformed, earning him his first Oscar nomination for Best Original Screenplay. Schrader's films are marked by a uniting theme, the psychology of loneliness, self-destruction, and rebellion. Schrader himself has stated that he uses filmmaking as a form of therapy, taking his personal problems and presenting them through metaphor to the audience.
So I walked into the whole screenwriting business as self-therapy, not as commerce.
The intimate connection we feel with Schrader's protagonist results directly from his own real-life catharsis. Today we'll be looking at Taxi Driver, a film spawned from a dark time in Schrader's life. Recently divorced from his wife, kicked out by his living girlfriend, and having broken ties with the AFI, Schrader was relegated to the streets, sleeping in his car.
And in the hospital, I got this image of the taxi cab. It came to me. This yellow rectangular coffin, metal coffin, floating through the open sewers of a metropolis. And inside that coffin is trapped a young man. And it looks like he's surrounded by life, but in fact, he's absolutely alone.
The script for Taxi Driver was born from this despair, written in just 10 days.
Schrader's extraordinary
Paul Schrader.
Paul Schrader script.
I think you had something to do with it.
Yeah, no, but Paul went through a lot on that one. He did a beautiful, delivered this. It was amazing. And De Palma gave me the script. Brian De Palma.
Is that right?
He said, "You got to read this thing." Yeah.
Yes. So you may-
Taxi Driver follows an insomniac taxi driver named Travis Bickle in his attempt to assassinate presidential candidate Senator Palantine. Schrader created Travis as a warning to himself.
I had to turn to fiction in order to get out of this place. I had to create this character or else I was going to become him.
The brilliance of Taxi Driver is Schrader's vivid image of a loner's diseased mindset. Travis begins to see himself as a savior, a martyr who must sacrifice himself to cleanse the world around him. In actuality, it is Travis who is corrupted, and his attempts to realize this contradiction drive the film forward. Let's dive into the internal struggle of Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver. We open with a quote that establishes the theme for the film, a technique which I'm growing increasingly fond of. The quote here is from an essay by American novelist Thomas Wolfe, titled God's Lonely Man. We're told up front that this film is going to be about loneliness and the suffering that it causes. Travis will continually try to make connections with people throughout the film, and the failure of these attempts leads him further down the path towards destruction. The next page is a rather in-depth description of Travis. I have no idea where Schrader got the cojones to fill an entire page with character description. I've yet to see this technique in any modern screenplay. Putting convention aside though, I love this addition to the script. As stated previously, the film is a character study. If I'm reading this script as an actor or director, I want to have a clear image of the central character. Schrader establishes Travis's history, his look, his persona, his outward image, and, crucially, his potential future. The clock spring cannot be wound continually tighter. As the Earth moves toward the sun, Travis Bickle moves toward violence. Now I get it. What happened to show don't tell? It's a fair point. It might feel a little cheap that Schrader explicitly tells us Travis's arc for the film. But personally, this line got me hyped up. I still don't know how Travis's violence will present itself, yet a promise has been made that raises my expectations as a reader. As long as Schrader delivers on his promise, which he certainly does, I don't mind this line. Although the nitpicker in me does feel the need to point out that the Earth is not moving closer to the Sun. If anything, it's actually moving away from the Sun at a rate of about 1.5 centimeters per year. But I digress. Schrader has set Travis's descent into violence on a cosmic scale. Schrader continues his streak of breaking screenplay convention by titling each of his scenes. For example, his first scene, Travis Gets a Job, delivers on exactly that promise. Usually this kind of titling is left behind the scenes in the outlining phase of a script, but the inclusion of these titles means that the reader knows roughly what to expect going into each scene. Furthermore, phrased in this way, each scene feels like a little vignette that exposes some further part of Travis's psyche. The solitary apartment scenes are particularly emblematic of this vignette ideology. The opening scene establishes Travis as a drifter through the night, motivating his shift into the taxi driving business. The scene is full of winter imagery, with Travis taking shelter inside. Throughout the script, we'll see warmth associated with companionship and acceptance, while cold is associated with loneliness and rejection. Travis is a cipher, cold and distant. This mysterious quality intrigues the people around him, disarming them with an enigmatic charm, sparking a transient interest from the people he meets. The credit sequence breaks into prose-like description that depicts New York City as a chaotic mishmash of rain, light, sound, and people. Cabs and umbrellas are congested everywhere. Well-dressed pedestrians are pushing, running, waving down taxis. The unremitting sound of honking and shouting play against the dull pitter-patter of rain. The glare of yellow, red, and green lights reflects off the pavements and autos. The city is a confused mess, yet there is one ticket to salvation. Only the taxis seem to rise above the situation. They glide effortlessly through the rain and traffic. Travis now inhabits a vantage point in which he is isolated from the city around him, yet privy to its dirty underbelly. Schrader signifies this distance using sound. All through the credits, the exterior sounds are muted. The listener is at a safe but privileged distance. In the next scene, Travis is called to action by his passenger. The passenger wants to know if flights from JFK are grounded due to fog, but Travis has no idea. The passenger grows increasingly irritated before yelling, "Why don't you stick your goddamn head out of the goddamn window once in a while?" As established in the credit sequence, Travis has been voyeuristically watching the goings-on around him without ever emerging into it. The interaction is cut from the final film, perhaps because it's a little on the nose, but its inclusion in the script is a nice setup for Travis finally confronting his world. There's a strong religious undercurrent in the story. This theme first appears as Travis narrates, bemoaning the state of the city.
Thank God for the rain, which has helped wash away the garbage and the trash off the sidewalks.
And later, Travis predicts a kind of divine intervention that will cleanse the filth.
Someday a real rain will come and wash all this scum off the streets.
Little does Travis realize that he will end up taking this role upon himself, becoming a holy warrior charged with the duty of purifying his world. Of course, the irony here is that Travis is part of the scum. We see this in a few ways throughout the script, beginning with the description of Travis's apartment. A ratty old mattress is thrown against one wall. The floor is littered with old newspapers. Indecipherable words, figures, numbers are scribbled on the plain plaster walls. Travis's apartment is a pigsty, yet he condemns the other late-night prowlers as animals. The next scene builds on this idea by introducing a glimpse into a cleaner world. Betsy. Betsy is the object of Travis's affection for much of the film. While she is beautiful, Travis worships her on the level of a goddess. As stated later in the script,
She appeared like an angel out of this filthy mess. She is alone. They cannot touch her.
this unhealthy obsession is made clear from the start as Travis stalks Betsy. Travis's cold, piercing eyes staring out. He is like a lone wolf watching the campfires of civilization. Travis has chosen to isolate himself from society, and so when he dares to venture close again, he comes across as weird, socially inept. In his loneliness, Travis has forgotten how to interact with other people. As stated later in the script, he is so much a part of his own world, he fails to comprehend another's world. And worst of all, he's completely oblivious to this fact, as his narration in the next scene reveals.
I don't believe that one should devote his life to morbid self-attention. I believe that someone should become a person like other people.
Travis praises conformity on a conscious level, perhaps a byproduct of his background serving in the army, but his words don't match his actions. He constantly shuns other people, pushing them away and calling them filth. Meanwhile, he sequesters himself inside his ramshackle apartment, drinking brandy and popping pills. I'd like to take this moment to also explain Schrader's use of narration in the script. The voiceovers are justified as excerpts from Travis's diary. Since Travis is solitary for much of the film, the diary is an excellent way to communicate his inner thoughts. The fact that his account of events is warped, that Travis is an unreliable narrator, keeps this technique interesting. He's constantly torn between a desire to belong and a disgust for his society. Travis's diary acts as a window into this internal schism. The next part of the film further explores this schism. While watching a hippie couple in love, Travis experiences a feeling sharply divided between cultural contempt and morose jealousy. While picking up fares, Travis studies the people on the streets, discerning where they might live, how much they might tip, how long it will take them to get home. It's a routine, mechanical and unemotional. He doesn't try to connect with his passengers, they're just numbers to him, and so they come and go, and Travis is still lonely. Betsy is the first to explicitly point out this disparity between Travis's words and actions when she quotes the song The Pilgrim by Chris Christopherson.
He's a prophet. He's a prophet and a pusher. Partly truth, partly fiction. Walking contradiction.
Travis feels uneasy about being accused of being forceful. He denies this side of himself, but when Travis tries to take Betsy to a dirty movie, we see that this accusation was correct. There's also something that Travis could not even acknowledge, much less admit, that he really wants to get this pure white girl into that dark porno theater. When Betsy realizes how sick Travis is, she pulls away. We're just two very different kinds of people, that's all. Travis has been rejected by the strata he wanted to join, and this leads him into despair. Travis continually sends Betsy flowers, all of which are returned, wilting. Travis feels sick from the smell of the flowers, just like he felt sick from the smell of the city streets. His mental state is deteriorating.
The headaches got worse. I think I got stomach cancer. I shouldn't complain though. You're only as healthy as you feel.
In this vulnerable moment, Travis has a fated encounter with a twisted passenger. The passenger talks about killing his cheating girlfriend, about the power of a gun. His ranting gives strength to Travis's sickened thoughts and propels him down a dangerous path. It's the same glazed over stare we saw in his eyes as he watched the porno movie. Travis is slowly learning to equate his need for sex and companionship with his urge for violence. Travis begins to switch into action over the next few scenes. He gets his body in shape, purchases guns, and begins training himself for the task ahead, to assassinate Palantine. I love how Schrader ramps up the energy over these few pages. At the firing range, Travis's violent nature begins to rear its head. With each blasting discharge from the Magnum, Travis's body shudders and shakes, his arm rippling back. Travis quickly bolts himself upright, as if each recoil from the gun was a direct attack on his masculinity. Much like the twisted passenger, Travis's craving for violence is coming from a place of insecurity. He feels as though his control over the power of the gun will assert his dominance. Throughout this second act of the script, two forces are competing to determine Travis's ultimate fate. On one hand, Travis is driven towards assassinating Palantine because, in his mind, Palantine is emblematic of the apathetic government who allows the streets to clog with waste. On the other hand, Travis meets an underage prostitute called Iris, who needs help to escape the streets and whom he feels he can rescue. Ultimately, however, both paths lead towards violence. Schrader balances these two forces expertly, playing them against one another to build tension before the climax. Take the next two scenes as an example. In the porno theater, after Travis's initial encounter with Iris, he is, for the first time, turned off by it. Travis averts his eyes as the action on screen becomes too graphic. Placing his stiffened right hand beside his eyes, Travis can, by turning it inward, shut off or open up his field of vision by small degrees. Iris has planted the seed of doubt in Travis's mind. This motion of the hand, the wavering between taking in the explicit content on screen and blocking it out, perfectly externalizes Travis's mindset. Directly following this, however, Travis falls back into using violence as a comfort tool. He prepares his guns, equips himself, hides his weapons, all while his narration builds his confidence.
Listen, you fuckers, you screwheads. Here is a man who would not take it anymore. A man who stood up against the scum, the cunts, the dogs, the filth, the shit. Here is someone who stood up. Here is...
Look at how Schrader's actually made it so that the dots on the page trail off. I just had to mention it, it's a great touch. All of this finally brings Travis some peace, and for the first time in the film, he's able to sleep. Travis lies on his mattress, all bundled up. The big furry animal drifts off into his own world. This line connects back to the lone wolf motif, showing that while Travis is content for now, he is still on the outskirts of society. This balancing act, the two competing forces, is brought to life as Travis watches a soap opera on his TV. He plays with the crate the TV rests on. He pushes the TV farther and farther until finally the inevitable happens. The crate tips backwards, sending the portable TV crashing to the floor. In the same way, whether Travis means to cause damage or not, it's in his nature. A violent ending to the story is inevitable. Travis looks to Wizard, a cabbie acquaintance, for advice on his sick thoughts. Unfortunately, Wizard has no words of comfort to give him. Look, a person does a certain kind of thing and that's all there is to it. It becomes what he is. Why fight it? Travis's attempt to reach out for support, his cry for help, is unheard by Wizard, who has no clue the extent of Travis's perturbation. Ironically, he actually validates Travis's thoughts with what are meant to be comforting words. Don't worry, killer, you'll be alright. Travis's last bastion of hope, Iris, similarly pushes him towards his violent nature. Travis condemns Iris's pimp, saying,
"That guy Sport's a killer, that's who's a killer."
The same moniker other people use for Travis. Iris points out this contradiction.
So what makes you so high and mighty? Will you tell me that? Didn't you ever try looking at your own eyeballs in the mirror?
Even Iris, the damsel in distress, sees the darkness within Travis. Finally, we learn why Travis, despite being so lonely, makes no attempt to connect with the girls he meets. I figure all day long men have been after them, so I figure the best I can do for them is not to bother them at all. I pretend I'm not even there. I figure they'll understand that, and appreciate me for it. As Schrader points out, this is a pure example of negative thinking. I am loved to the extent I do not exist. Travis feels like an annoyance to women. He doesn't value himself. He believes that his life is worthless. With all support from the outside world withdrawn, Travis caves in. His final narration of the film sets him up for self-destruction.
Loneliness has followed me my whole life. Everywhere. Bars and cars. Sidewalks, stores, everywhere. There's no escape. And God's a lonely man.
Travis is now suicidal, and with his violent mindset, his last choice becomes who to destroy with him. He is willing to die for a cause he doesn't fully comprehend, to become a martyr, simply to escape this world. This launches us into the film's third act, beginning with the assassination attempt on Palantine. Schrader changes up the structure of his screenplay to signify the increased focus on action. With no more narration and minimal dialogue, action text takes up most of the page. The blocks of action text get smaller and smaller as Palantine finishes his speech and moves off the stage. Eventually, single lines of action text describe Travis approaching Palantine, getting in position for his shot. And then, just when you expect a big moment of action, Travis turns, runs, he bails out on his plan. He's failed. The scene ends, and the reader is left baffled. What now? And then, Schrader gives this line of action text that should feel so out of place, yet in this exact context, works perfectly. The film is moving fast now. It pushes hard and straight towards its conclusion. We're moving towards the kill. Instantly, the reader is pulled back in. The promise of violence has not been broken. We've just been given a false start. What follows is an extremely bloody scene, the promised tension breaker. Schrader captures the violence of the moment perfectly by constantly reiterating the force and gore of the sequence. The old man's right hand has been blown off at the forearm. Sport lies choking in a puddle of his own blood. Travis fills the private cop's face full of bullet holes. The bloody knife blade sticks through his upturned hand. I mean, seriously, that's just a handful of the brutal sentences in this sequence. It sounds more like a Tarantino film than the psychological film we've been watching up until this point. In fact, it's so different that it could even be jarring to the reader. Schrader includes a screenwriter's note here to explain himself. He doesn't shy away from explaining the intention of the scene, how it should be delivered. The slaughter itself is a gory extension of violence, more surreal than real. It is a reality unto itself. It is the psychopath's second coming. Schrader doesn't mince words. He is directly comparing Travis's acts to Jesus' martyrdom, albeit a perversion of those ideals. Miraculously, Travis survives. His slaughter of Sport and his associates has earned him fame. He is hailed as the taxi driver hero. After all this internal struggle over his violent nature, his repression of the urge to lash out against the people around him, Travis finally explodes and, instead of being condemned, he's rewarded for it. He could have killed Palantine. He was so close, but due to pure chance, coincidence, Travis's violence was instead directed towards a vigilante cause. Travis is vindicated by the society that he thought was so sick, yet the very fact that it glorifies Travis's psychopathy proves that it actually is sick. Schrader demonstrates this perverse acceptance with one final taxi ride. Betsy gets in, and all her concerns have seemingly dissipated. As she gets out of the cab, she says, "Call me up sometime, huh?" And Travis, at peace, drives off. He has finally achieved recognition, acceptance. In the film, Scorsese adds a brilliant final note here. Travis shoots a paranoid look into the rearview mirror, his eyes still wide, scared. Scorsese states his intention here.
And at the end of it, I decided I'd put something on that shows that the timer starts to tick again.
I love this touch, and so did Schrader. Travis hasn't been cured. He's still one incredibly messed up individual. The cycle will begin anew, and that violence will rear its ugly head once again. Taxi Driver is an incredibly introspective film. Much of the action text is used to explain Travis's inner thoughts, how he views people, how he views love, how he views violence. This description can't be seen on screen, but it informs the filmmaking intention of the director and the expressions of the actor. We're commonly told as screenwriters to show, not tell, but I think Taxi Driver is a perfect example of how to both show and tell. The telling is key to create an emotional response in the reader, placing us inside Travis's mind. Then, equipped with that knowledge, the The action that unfolds on screen either challenges Travis's own words in his diary or reinforces the commentary asides provided to us by Schrader. This screenwriting technique forms the basis for Schrader's transcendental style. In the next episode, I'll be delving into Schrader's most recent film, First Reformed, to discuss transcendental style in depth and explore the commonalities of theme across Schrader's work. Good writing and good luck.